Folks, it would be the year 19, it was the Christmas of 1954. And it was the year that Franklin and I became husband and wife at the First Congregational Church in Wellesley Hills, where all that money is. And Franklin called up. Well, when Franklin was a newspaper reporter, he was given the beat of the church reporter when the church reporter went on vacation, and he became very much a friend of Dr. John Elmo Wallace, who was the minister of the First Congregational Church in Court Square in Springfield. But John Elmo Wallace was very able, and he was chosen by the congregation in the very wealthy Wellesley Hills, where Babson Institute is, and Wellesley College. He was chosen to be the minister there. And so when it came time to make wedding arrangements, Franklin called Dr. John Elmo Wallace, and wife Lucy said, well, he isn't in right now. Franklin called to make the wedding arrangements, and Lucy said, well, is it anything important? And Franklin said, no, I'll call back. Well, Lucy never let him forget that. And we were married on Christmas Day at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a huge wedding. My mother and father and Franklin's mother and father. And then we went to the Concord Inn, Concord, Massachusetts, Lexington. One is by land, two is by sea, Paul Revere. And we had lunch at the Concord Inn, and either Dr. Wallace or Mr. Grimes, his friend, paid for it. My mother and father went on to the state of Maine, where their relatives were, for Christmas. And Franklin's parents went to Connecticut, where all their people were. Franklin and I went to Springfield. Oh, it was cold. Oh, it was so cold. Oh, it was so cold that Christmas Day. It wasn't very nice, Glendora, to be married on Christmas Day. It took Dr. John Elmo Wallace away from his family and children and wife. How many more pics do we have, Greg?
Oh, just a couple there, so yeah.
Okay, then let's stay with it to the end.
Alright, so. And so they're still going, so.
Be thou forever near me,
Alright.
my buddy and my friend. I shall not fear the challenge, if thou art by my side, nor wander from the pathway, if thou wilt be my guide. So it was a 13-week commitment. Oh, dirty business. Captain Kangaroo tried to take the program away from me, or tried to take Milton Bradley away from me. And Mr. Shea, being the person that he was, with all those personal ties to me, my husband, a reporter of the Springfield Union across the street from the United States Envelope Company, of which he was once president, and the American International College ties, and the fact that I lived up the street 3 or 4 blocks from the Milton Bradley Company, and he lived in Springfield also. Oh, and also James Shea Jr. for a while went to Classical High School, where I was for a while. Later he went to a private school. But and his girlfriend, James Shea Jr.'s girlfriend, Marilyn Hunderup, was a pretty close friend of mine in high school. But Mr. Shea, being the man that he was, did you think he let the business go to Captain Kangaroo, CBS morning show? Do you think so? He did not. He remained loyal to me. And he saw it through. So the program went its 13 weeks, and Mr. Shea, I asked him to renew it. And he said, I will think about it. You call me. He was dealing directly with me. Where was Mr. Whipple at this point? I met Mr. Whipple's wife. I think they came to Boston. It came time and I called up Mr. Shea, can you renew it? He said no. Now, I didn't understand why. Now I understand, folks. Don't you see, their income is Christmas time. It wouldn't pay for them. It would not be financially feasible for them to advertise the rest of the year. The receipt, the remuneration would not be there, because that was not the buying season. That was not the buying season for the buying system. So now I understand why Mr. Shea didn't renew, but I understand now why he was gracious enough to extend it 2 weeks. So there again, get out a photo album, fill it up with all of the photographs, showing that it was sponsored, and there again, under the arm, TV station after TV station, advertising agencies, there again. It's a fickle business. It's a fickle business, television. People are very easily fired, on whim, volatile, very, very volatile. So just let me review. In 1953 or 1952, it came to me that the thing that I was supposed to do with these years was television, and it was supposed to be on camera television. So we went to Hollywood to try to make the big time, and we realized that that's no place to make the big time if you don't have the experience. So you go back to the little towns and you have the experience, and that was Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Channel 74, WMG-TV, Mount Greylock Television, a brainchild of Leon Podolsky, who was some kind of a consultant for Adams Electric in North Adams. Was it Adams Electric? Sprague Electric. And doing the 26 weeks there of Glendora and her picture party. And before that was over, having landed the SS Glendora on the Merrimack River, or is it the Merrimack River, in Manchester, New Hampshire, and getting that started, and resigning from WMGT as a scriptwriter, copywriter, and working on the Manchester show, doing that in all of its glory and its fun and its excitement, getting married, and then going all over the Northeast, trying to sell the program again, and then the grace of God, the Milton Bradley Company, and Mr. Whipple. Now, what's happened after Christmas of 1954? That will be our next chapter. What do you call fake spaghetti? The great impasta. Are you through, Gray?
Yes, yeah, I'm ready. So.
You're all through your pictures?
Yeah, yeah, right now.
And the nurse in the maternity ward came out with a darling baby in her arms, and she said to the new dad, "What'd you want? A boy or a girl?" He said, "I wanted a girl." "Well, I'm sorry, this is a boy." And the dad says, "Okay, that was my second choice."
All right, let's see.
Well, now, my dear friends, it is Sunday morning, but it is not Sunday morning communion. It is not Glendora soul to soul. It is a documentary.
An earthquake was rumored to, was not rumored, it was reported to be on its way in California. And this couple sent their young son deep into the interior to be with an uncle, where the boy would be safe.
Earthquake.
And in 3 days they got an email from the uncle saying, "I'm returning the boy, send the earthquake."
Let me get rid of this audio. And we are doing a documentary of the Glendora TV career.
Did you go vegan? Did you stop eating animal products? Stop using animal products? Let the animals be free. No
Well, that's good.
exploitation of animals. Did you?
And we went from Glendora and a Picture Party, which started in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, to the SS Glendora, which was born in Manchester, New Hampshire, Channel 9, right outside of Boston, 40 miles north of Boston. And then it went to the great big Boston, WBZ-TV, Westinghouse Channel 4, Boston. That was big. It was sponsored by Milton Bradley. Then it went to General Electric in the Albany, Troy, Schenectady, Tri-City area of the capital of the state of New York. And that was big time too. And then WRGB management, Raymond Wilpott, decided to cancel all of the live shows. And all of those lovely live shows were aborted. And that would be Earl Pudney and the After 6-7 and Ernie Tatro and Sonny Jennings and ESS Glendora, not Freddie Freihofer, because that was money. That was sponsored by Freihofer Baking, now owned by Entermans. And so we were all canned at a mass meeting, and Glendora went home to Buffalo. So it was a year, less than a year maybe, that they were proved wrong. And Glendora got a telephone call. "Come back, come back. We need a live television show for children." And so Glendora took the train across New York State, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, and Albany, to WRGB, and here we are in a new building that cost millions of dollars. We were in an old refurbished bowling alley down on the Mohawk River. Here we were in Niskayuna, a great, great big building on 5 or 6 acres. And a huge new studio and great luxury and a whole lot of money. It just glowed with money all over the place. It was General Electric. And so we met in their new offices and we planned the show. What would it be? Glendora says, well, it could be an old car. kids come home after school and play in the old car, because Glendora had very old cars. She had a 1950 Dodge and she had a 1956 Dodge, Glendora and Franklin. But then that wasn't old then, because this is, what year is this that they called us back, called Glendora back anyway. This was in the year 1958. The SS Glendora was 55 and 56. It might have been the year, yeah, it would be 58, 1958. So it was decided that it would be a spaceship, and Glendora was the captain, was the skipper, was the captain of the spaceship. And Jim Fisk went to work. The grand imagination and creativity of James Fisk, who did Freddie Freihofer toward the end, and who left eventually to start his own map company called Jim Map. That's where he ended up. I think of all of that crew now, folks, I think Glendora and maybe Ernie Tatro are the only ones alive. Or seemingly alive. Now, my mother, my daddy ended his days with an aneurysm. And then my mother sold the house in Springfield and rented a house in Schenectady and came and we lived together. And my mother took care of the fan mail. How much fan mail? 30, 40 letters a day? That's what it was on the SS Glendora. But what was it on Satellite 6? With Bob Johnson doing the promotion. And these Felix the Fan Club, Satellite 6 Glendora, Satellite 6 Felix the Fan Club. I think the highest it reached in one day, the fan mail was 740 children who wanted a membership card, Felix the Fan Club. $740 letters in one day. And my mother would open the letters and address the envelope and put the child's name on the membership card and send it out and take it to the mail room. And I guess they stamped it and sent them out. My mother did that all volunteer. The biggest General Electric was, they never offered to pay her. Well, how much money were you making, Glendora? I believe it was $375 a week. That would be about $1,600 a year, right? I mean, $1,600 a month, right? About 16 or 17,000 a year. Now, my experience is that inflation has quadrupled. What's your experience? So that would be about 48 or 50,000 a year. For a woman in 1950s to make that amount of money, that was considered phenomenal, wasn't it? Was it? Okie dokie. And the little boy came in to be on the Freddie Freihofer show, and he went up to Mae Dunn. And that particular Friday, they had decided to videotape the Glendora Satellite 6. And Glendora went home to Buffalo. And the little boy came in to see Glendora, and he said to Mae Dunn, "May I see Glendora?" He's all full of love and happiness for the show. And Mae Dunn says, "I'm sorry, Glendora isn't live today." Glendora went to the schools. He went to assembly programs in the schools. And she did tricks for them, and she did jokes for them, and told them stories. And it was gales of applause and laughter. They didn't care what Glendora said. Anything Glendora did was okay. It was like Bob Hope going to the troops overseas. No matter what he did, it was all right. He was a star, and he came to see them. Now, I did audio tape some of those appearances, and I do have one of them, folks, on an RPM, 78 RPM. The WGY engineer took it from the audio tape assembly that they let me take. And by then it was pretty good. Audio was down to about this size. I finally got a good one. And they put it on a platter. And I will have to go through the archives of a chat with Glendora of the year 2012, when Gregory Washburn, ingenious, put that RPM on a DVD so that you could see it today. So we'll have to do that. That's a project. It was too bad. There was no video, of course, in those days. The incident I spoke of was in late 1962. But that's when video came in. That's when videotape came in. But at least I should have audio taped them. I should have asked WGY to audio tape them. That was so silly. I didn't. How many shows were there in those years? This was 1958, 1959, 1960, 61, 62. There were 1,000 shows, 5 shows a day, 5 shows a week, 50 weeks a year. That's like 250. So there were about 1,000 shows in those 4 years, and no record of them. And when videotape did come in, my goodness, folks, the machine was an Ampex, and it was this long, and it was this tall, up to your waist, and it was this deep. And I saw him hoist it. It came through the rear door, the delivery door, and then it was hoisted up to the control room, which was on the 2nd floor. That would be LNAP. And the videotape was 2 inches. 2 inches. And an hour show was on a spool this big. Oh, and by the time I went back to TV, when I left TV in 55, everything was black and white. When I came back, it was still black and white. And color was just coming in. Yeah, color was just coming in. It was still black and white. Glendora Satellite 6 was black and white. And all the different color clothes you could wear on TV, always what looked the best was black and white. Black and white always looked the best on black and white TV. Now, my office, and we had offices. We had a tiny office at WRGB. It was really a hole in the wall, and Earl Jarris's office was there. At 1 o'clock, he played the piano Monday through Friday, or was it Monday, Wednesday, Friday? And Glendora's office was next to him, and it was about as big as it was a cubby hose. And it was a telephone and a desk. An old wooden desk. But Well, it was something. It was the first time I'd had an office. But at WRGB, Walltown Road, Niskayuna, the talent had its own office. And there was Stevenson, John Charles Stevenson, who did the Chanticleer farm show early in the morning, and Enoch, who used to go around New York State and tell stories on WGY, and Martha Brooks, who had the cooking show, and the SS Glendora, and then a desk for Mohawk Hudson, but they never used a desk, so my mother used that one. It was her desk. And it was a thrill. If the show was on at 5:15, it was a thrill to get up at 10 after 5 and walk onto the set and do the performance. It was a thrill. Enough people saw it to fill Yankee Stadium. 56, 57,000, the old Yankee Stadium. It was a great thrill. You remember how powerful TV was. TV was a media. Of course, radio was a media. You heard radio at the time it was happening. This was great. Movies couldn't give you that, okay? Well, vaudeville did, but not in your own home. But here's television, which is sound and picture and motion, live. Immediate. It was the grandest communications medium mankind had ever developed. Television. And it was everybody's concern. You didn't eat in the kitchen anymore. You ate in the living room where the television was. You didn't eat off of the dining room table. You ate from a TV table. You didn't cook meals anymore. You had TV dinners. And everybody went to the bathroom at the same time. That's when the commercials came on. And the water department of the different municipalities would record a great increase in water usage when the commercials came on. There was never a day like it. Live television in the 1950s, that whole decade. Well, what was up in the control room? The director of the show. It could be Jack Finch, it could be Hal Green, it could be Grant Van Patten, it could be Lenny Salaki. The director sat at the control panel. And I will show you a picture of the old control panel they used at the old bowling alley down on the Mohawk River, downtown Schenectady, right where General Electric is, or was. But this control room was really big and really loaded with expensive equipment. This was a really big control room. And so the director would sit there with the audio man at his left. And he never saw the studio with his own eyes. He saw the studio only through a mass of TV monitors. A monitor for camera 1, a monitor for camera 2, a monitor for camera 3. Were they color? No, they were not. General Electric was fighting the battle to win color. So was Westinghouse, and so was, I think, Philco. And so was CBS, trying to win the market for color. But they all lost. Who won it? You know, RCA. RCA, General Sarnoff. That's who won it. In the meantime, RCA, who owned NBC, and NBC was gobbling up the public's airwaves and making billions on the NBC TV shows, making billions with their commercials and robbing the public of its own airwaves. Not until, well, we had the public broadcasting system, but that still wasn't the public has a right to TV. It wasn't until cable TV came in that the public got back its right to public TV. Until it got back its right to the airwaves, I should say. That was wrong, and that's a whole story and a chapter in itself. So the director sat there, and all he saw were these monitors, and the audio man sat here. And the director would say to the cameraman, line up such and such a shot. Camera 2, stand by for a close-up. Camera 3, you do this. And then he would say, take 1, take 3, take 2. And then you tell the cameraman to dolly or to pan or to tilt. And the signs, there's a floor, and then there was a floor man down on the floor who had a headset. They all had headsets. And then the floor man would tell Glendora what the director wanted. And the signals in those days were really something. The signals that the floor man gave me, half of a minute, 30 seconds, speed it up, slow it down. And this one, what was this one? You're a little behind. So I had to look into the camera and not look at the floor man, but I had to see the floor man out of the corner of my eye and give the director a good picture. Teenage Barn was there Friday nights. It was live. It was a creation of Tommy, a dance instructor, and he got it sponsored. And why was it on the TV all those years? Because it was sponsored by a bank. It eventually atrophied. The costumes that they made for Glendora were terrific. They were made by the wife of one of the men who worked at WRGB. And the first one was silver. And it was the cuffs and the little hat like an airline hostess, and the great big shoulder wings, and the great big 6 for Satellite 6 on the belt. It was beautifully done, and there was more creativity. Now WRGB, this creativity goes back many years. WRGB started making television sets in 1932, I believe. 1932. And by the time the World's Fair came along in 1938, they were able to send a television signal live from Schenectady to Queens, to the World's Fair in Queens. And what signal did they use? Because it was black and white and so delineated, they used Felix the Cat. People could go to the World's Fair in 1938 and in Queens and see television, radio with pictures. And WRGB, in its experimentation, had to have programs for people to watch, because why buy a television set made by General Electric if you didn't have programs to watch? So they had no network, They didn't have film. So they had to produce their own programs. And twice a week, we'll say Tuesdays and Thursdays, they would put on television programs. And they had these tiny, tiny television sets with a magnifying glass in front of them so you could see the picture. The television set was about this big. They had a magnifying glass so you could see it. And where were these television sets? In the homes of General Electric executives. So you had to have programs for people to watch. And so they would put on live dramas. It was their primitive cameras, primitive audio. And a woman called up, a wife of a General Electric executive, and she said, my bridge club is meeting, or my women's club it was, is meeting on Wednesday. I know that you telecast on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but this week could you please telecast on Wednesday so my club could see it? Isn't that funny? Well, what's even funnier is that they did. He changed the day from Tuesday to Wednesday. So when the costumes first came out, it was silver, and I wore that for a year. Then I thought it'd be nice to have a yellow one. Then I thought it'd be nice to have a pink one. So I told whoever it was, we had a prop man. He was cute. He was a college kid. He went to Union College. That's in Schenectady, Union College, great college. So I told somebody, and so he went and told the woman to make a new costume. And Jim Fisk built that set. And he had maps on the wall of the constellation of the stars. And guess who the constellations were? Porky Pig, Sylvester Cat, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck. And then he went and got a ball of some kind, and he put a fence around the middle of it that said Satellite 6. And he had that standing on a standard that he made. And then for the control panel to control the spaceship, Satellite 6 spaceship, Glendora, they had the old control panel that they had down at WRGB on the Mohawk River. I'll show you pictures of that. That was the greatness of Jim Fisk. Charlie McGarrahan was also an artist there. Commercials. This was the dominant children's program of the area. Why not? It was WRGB. For a long time there was no other channel but Channel 4, which became Channel 6 because the Channel 4 signal was so strong and interfered with Boston. The FCC changed it to Channel 6. It was the only channel. Then Channel 10 came in and Channel 13 came in, and they were weaker sisters. It had the highest ratings. And of course it was very popular. It was filled mostly. You were allowed 6 commercials in 45 minutes. 2 commercials per 15-minute period in those days. Now it's out of sight. This was regulation by the Federal Communications Commission. We had a prop man, that was Ronnie Penistan. Mae Dunn was the receptionist, a perfect person, full of love for everybody but herself. Her husband worked for General Electric. Everybody worked for General Electric. Glendora would go to the schools and do jokes and tricks, and I told you about that, how enthusiastic the children were, and that we would play you of the RPM, the 78 RPM of that. General Electric, of course, was always afraid of being sued because they had so much money. And so they would, not a lot, but they would watch Glendora carefully that she didn't cause any lawsuits. How much money was Glendora making for that? Having all that fun every day and all that thrill, all that ecstasy and that euphoria, exhilaration. How much money? $375 a week. We told you that. Okie dokie. At that time, Perry Como came out with a song, a platter. I'm in love with a dolly named Glendora. She works in the window of a big department store. Eyes of blue and hair of gold. She'll never be young, but she'll never be old. Oh, Glendora, I want to see more of you, more of you. I believe that that song was written by somebody who lived in the Capital District and saw the Glendora Satellite 6 every day, and his imagination went into that work. We had promotions. I took children to New York City. I called up this Sid Caesar show and I asked for the people behind the scenes, and I said, I would like to bring 2 children, viewers, from my TV show to New York City and watch a rehearsal of the show of shows, Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca. And they, and that was a prize. That was a contest and a prize, and I took the 2 children to New York on the train, and we did that. That was a tremendous risk, Glendora. How old were you then? 28, 27, 30? That was a tremendous risk, Glendora. But we did it, and it came off all right, and the people who let us into the show, they told us to go to the stage door, and they let us into the show, and then let us into the rehearsal. And they said they didn't want the children to stay long because Sid Caesar would have temper tantrums and he would use very foul language. Sid Caesar, by the way, I believe his dad had a bar in Yonkers, New York, and he was a great mimic, a great talent, as you well know. And then we did the same thing for the Perry Como show. I took 2 children down to New York to see the Perry Como show, a rehearsal, and we watched that, and then when it was over, we were standing at the door, and Perry Como came out, and of course always with a retinue. These stars always had a retinue. I learned that at NBC Hollywood when they would come in the artist entrance. Like Bob Hope would come in with 3 or 4 people, maybe more. And I said to Perry Como, I'm Glendora. And he looked, and he smiled graciously, and he left. Was that all you had to do? Didn't you have to do some secretarial work? No, that was all I had to do. And were you the envy of the rest of the staff? Yes. I came to work anytime I wanted, left anytime I wanted. Sat out in the sun and the view of, they could see me in the window because I lived in the house next door. They could see me sitting in the sun while they were working. That was not very nice, Glendora. Personality was not good. There was always the will and the exertion to help others, no matter what the problem was. But the ego was too large. The ego didn't realize that what made a star was not Glendora. What made the star were the other people. But there was that search for the greatness, the success of which didn't come until years later. But there was that search. Went to church regularly to try to find it there, and didn't. Searching to be perfect, that's what it was. The jokes were very good, they were getting better and better. And then I would go home I would get on the train Friday night. The show was over at 6 o'clock and the train came something like 6:30, and somebody always gave me a ride to the railroad station all the way from Niskayuna. And I would get on the train. The New England states or the Ohio State Limited. This was when New York Central was big and operable and reliable and nice. And that train would come up from New York to Albany, load at Albany, stop at Utica, and stop at Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. And so this was every week, Friday night. And get home to Buffalo around 11 o'clock, and there was Franklin at the railroad station. And I was Franklin's wife on Saturday and Sunday, and Franklin was the star in Buffalo. Who is Franklin? Franklin Fuller Buell, my connubial joy for 48 years, and still my connubial joy, 63 years ago. Tonight, Christmas Eve, tomorrow, we were married. 1954 on Christmas Day at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Wellesley Hills First Congregational Church. But Franklin was a star in Buffalo because Franklin Fuller Buell was a reporter for the prestigious Buffalo Evening News, which dominates Western New York. And his byline was in the newspaper twice a day, maybe. So he was a star. Oh, you're Franklin's wife. And of course, he was extremely popular. He knew where self belonged and he knew where ego belonged. And he was sweet and amiable and good-natured, kind-hearted. He was extremely popular. Now, WRGB, I was there during the transition in the 50s of news, the domination of news over television. News sold. News sold money. People wanted to hear the news, they wanted to hear the weather, they wanted to hear sports. So everything in television, live television, local television, was being taken over by the news. And WRGB, through Ernie Tatro and Al Zink, had the TV station buy 2 new Chevrolet vans. Suburban cars. They really weren't vans. Station wagons. And they were all painted with WRGB, Channel 6, the news, and so forth. Well, all of the personnel had access to those vans, those 2 station wagons. The keys were on the board by the rear door. You just go and take a key and you'd sign out. So I used to drive to the schools to do these personal appearances in those vans. And can you imagine going down the road and seeing Glendora Satellite 6 driving a Chevrolet down the road? My awareness of the cruelty to animals came in very, very strongly during those years. And I was always helping animals, and I was always trying to find cats' homes and dogs' homes. And that's when I became acquainted with Alice Harrington and the Friends for Animals in New York City. And she had space certificates and she would send a spay certificate, which was $10 to get a cat spayed. And I could help poor people get their cat spayed, and I did that. That was a conflict with what I was doing with Glendora Satellite 6. But that had grown since that time, and grown and grown and grown. I would go out of my way to help the animals. I would go out of my way to help people. And I didn't care whether I was a TV star or not. I would help. Gee, we're doing very well here. We're doing very well. Oh, here we are on the last page. Trying to think if I got everything in. I think I did post. Of course, a dozen things will come to me when I turn off the camera that I should have told you and shared with you. And I left WRGB in the fall, early fall of the year 1962. And I went home to Buffalo. I came back for a personal appearance. I think I came back and got a cat too, that I left there that I thought was going to be with a nice family. But I didn't like the way the cat was being treated. And I brought the cat home to Buffalo. I think that was it. Okay. Then what? Well, then started the interviewing of people, adults, and the ad-lib jokes. And the interviews that were so interesting, what people said, and the jokes that were so funny. That was the years. No, that was much later. And that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story and a very large story about going to New York and going on network television across the country. That's a whole different story, folks. So we're going to stop here, and what I will do now is put the camera, put all these things that .com is sleeping on, .com cat is sleeping on, and I'll put them on the stand, and put a close-up camera on that, and I'll go through those with you and show you the memorabilia, the actual physical things you held in your hands. Why did the prince ask his daddy, the king, to go to kindergarten with him? Because the teacher said, bring a ruler to school. Faith of our fathers living still. We all know what to do. It's how we treat others. And it is helping others. Now, can you see these folks? These were promotions by advertising agencies in New York who thought that Glendora Satellite 6 was a super children's salesperson and how it increased sales. And these are letters of compliments and telling about the TV appearances in the schools. And this brought, of course, more and more commercials. The program was always filled, as I say, with commercials. These are letters of recommendation. Really, it's egos. It goes without saying. The show spoke for itself, really. This is interesting. I can't tell you what it is. I can't see it. I can't read it. I don't think you can. But this was 3M's copying machine. 3M, Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining, wasn't it? Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. And they came out with this copying machine, but it required this special paper, and that's how they were going to make the money. They sold the copying machine for $100 and the paper, but it never worked. And it's a good thing it didn't work, because look what happened to it over the years. There's all kinds of glowing letters of recommendation. So there it was, 4 years, 1,000 shows, right? 5 shows a week, 50 weeks a year is 1,000 shows in 4 years, right? Well, Glendora wanted the experience of being in front of the camera. Well, that certainly did it. What were the ratings? The ratings were the highest, and as I say, how many people watch the show? Enough to fill Yankee Stadium. What's that, a coloring book? You can see better than I can, you know. Bugs Bunny, is that a coloring book? WRGB. These are some pictures by Jim Talbot. My mother, who worked so hard on the show, and she was a very good friend of Jim Talbot's mother. A lot of newspaper articles, a lot of newspaper ads, many ads in the TV Guide. How were you able to keep up with it all, Glendora? I was. Woolworth. Glendora personal appearance in Woolworth. Glendora. Come and see Glendora in person. This is not Glendora Satellite 6. This is Glendora SS Glendora. And it's not even WRGB. Yes, it is WRGB. Isn't that cute? Isn't that sweet? Look at their little faces, their little bodies, little people, tiny people, grow up to be big people. And this was their age, and this is what they remember today when I walk through Walmart today. They're 9 years old, and now they're 68 years old. This was a typical commercial. Every day of the week I had to eat cocoa marsh. Put it on cake, put it in milk, put it on ice cream. And the commercials were supposed to be, in those days, 60 minutes, 60 seconds. Commercials today went to 30 seconds. When I went back to television from the SS Glendora to the Glendora Satellite 6, the commercial length had changed from 60 seconds to 30 seconds, so they could make more money. There's this beautiful work of Jim Fisk. Hold it, everybody. I only have one hand here because of .com cat. There. See that? The constellation? And the constellations are Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Sylvester Cat. Jim Fisk did this. This is the old control panel that was down at WRGB. I believe within 2 minutes of showing you these photos, when the SD card on the JVC filled up, the JVC camcorder, I just want to make sure, before we leave the subject, that you saw these pictures. This is a newspaper clipping of about a personal appearance, I believe, no, about a contest, about that boy who always won every contest I ever had. That boy right there. Okay, now let's see if there's one on the back. That would be a commercial. And the Cocoa Marsh commercials every day. This looks like another commercial. Just hold on just a second. These went to the advertising agencies, of course, in Madison Avenue. He brought in the money. That's what it was all about, money. But not for me. It was about education and goodness and fun and laughter and joy and wholeness. There's Felix the cat, his little kit that he gave people who played his cartoons. Oh, look at this. This is the last one. What happened to that waistline? So be it. Next we will pick up with Wayne Collins, I think, who was one of the super fans of the SS Glendora. Almost big a fan as Jimmy Talbot. Until then, grace and peace unto you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ, helping others and treating people right, and animals right, treating animals right.
And so, go ahead.
Folks, I want you to meet a man I just met, Mr. Nichols. And what did you say to me, Mr. Nichols?
Clark Nichols.
And that you used to?
I used to watch you on Channel 6 or whatever channel it was. We only had 2 or 3 of them back then.
That's right.
And
And so
one of my favorite shows, you and Freddie Freihofer.
And you want to know something? I know how old you are, 68?
You're right. Exactly.
And I think you were about 9 years old?
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't
And
remember
what
that.
town was that?
In Pittsfield, right here.
Oh, in Pittsfield.
Yeah, been here all my life.
Oh, good. Did you hear that, Wayne?
Yes, I did.
He was watching it about the same time you were.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Come on over, Wayne.
You look familiar.
So,
Yeah.
this is Wayne. All right, I'll get you all in there.
This is my friend Wayne Collins, and he is the consummate SS Glendora fan. And he's here today to recall the many, where are your notes? You have 4 or 5 pages of
yes.
notes.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, right. What do you remember about the show, Mr. Nichols?
Not too much. I don't have any specific memories other than just
Yeah.
fuzzy photos
Yeah.
of scenes on the fuzzy television back then.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't dare ask Wayne because he goes on for pages. He goes
Probably
on.
the show you remember more so is the Satellite 6
Yeah,
broadcast.
yeah.
The Satellite 6, right?
That would be it.
And it was a steamship, folks, and it was the SS Glendora. And I told them that the SS stood for steamship, and they said it stood for stupid show. Well, Mr. Nichols and Mr. Collins, thank you very much. We're making a collection of these.
Oh, good.
We're making an SS
I
Glendora
think I made
documentary.
a cameo appearance in your show from the Carousel earlier this summer, last summer.
Oh,
I
you
guess.
did?
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh.
I'll have to.
Well,
Maybe
let's write
maybe
down-
I ended up on the editing room floor.
No. Let's write down your name and telephone number. Wayne, you have a piece of paper.
All right, all right.
Do you live here now?
Yeah, I'm autistically.
Why do you keep going north?
If you could write
Kids
down.
start off having
Where
autism.
the weather's so much
I
better.
forgot, you live in Lenox?
He became a grandfather. My
Oh, you
husband.
do live in
Okay, well, it's a very nice show.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You remind me
Your
of Lucille
telephone.
Ball.
Yeah. Isn't it darling?
Oh, it is darling.
Oh, they
It's
were so
awesome.
cute.
Oh, my God.
All right.
But I'm doing
Thanks.
the packet. Thank you. July.
All right, so where's mine? Oh, no, we're not putting them away.
So,
Oh, there's another show.
that's all right. They can put it on. So I
The
started.
next show, there's
We'll leave the mics out for, that are here.
just get a couple seconds. All right, Glendora is going to be interviewing Wayne Collins in Pittsfield, January 5th.
You rolling?
Okay.
It's very important, Greg. This is part of
Quiet
the
on set?
part of the documentary, honey. Okay. Who's going to give me a countdown, or do you want me to give you a countdown?
1, 2, 3.
Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Wayne Collins Show. Hi, Wayne Collins. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Glenda?
Well, now, oh, superbly, A+. Now, folks, we are trying to make a documentary.
Hang on 1 second, please. We're going to start over again
Okay.
because somebody forgot to turn on the microphone.
Oh, that's good.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Wayne Collins Show. Wayne, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Glenda?
Oh, you are an integral part of this documentary that we are making, Wayne. We're trying to recapture the wonders of live television in the late 1950s. You have never seen anything like it. You will never see anything like it. The whole thing was just so young and fresh and clean and spontaneous and uncontrived. It was just a great, great period. And the SS Glendora was a show for children, by children, with children, and run by children. And here is one of his super fans. Tell the folks from the beginning. One day you turned on the TV set, and what did you see?
You were replacing a show called The Friendly Fireman. And this particular show, and I remember the very first broadcast you did over WRGB for the SS Glendora show, you usually would start with a little cardboard, I assume, cut out, and it was the ocean with a boat. It said SS Glendora, and I believe someone was behind it, moving it back and forth, so it was as if the boat were rocking back and forth, and your theme song was the Sailor's Hornpipe, which you'd be playing every night. But this first night, the camera trained on you on the deck of your ship, and you had 2 boys and 1 girl with you that night. You had a pair of binoculars, and you said, the friendly fireman has left in his boat. Can you see him out there on the ocean? And you handed the binoculars to the first boy, who was smaller, and he looked through them, and he said no, and you handed them to the girl, and you said, can you see him? And she said no, and you handed them to the third boy, and he looked, and you said, can you see him? And he said yes.
What a wonderful memory. The very first show, and you can remember, this is the year 1955, and you were how old?
7.
7!
And I remember you did not break for advertisements. You did all of your commercials live on the show. And of course, it was a 15-minute show, so every minute had to really count, and you packed a lot into your 15 minutes. And one ad I specifically remember, you were advertising a brand of sneakers. And you said to one of the boys, you've spoiled our bunting. And he had all the sneakers tied on the rope hanging down. And that was how you'd go into that commercial, and it was very smooth, and you'd have your commercial, and then you go back to the program. And
The children actually participated in everything.
Yes.
They were part of it.
yes, you used to have quizzes, maybe on safety, for example, and every question that was answered correctly merited a cut-off piece from your necktie. And so-
I had a necktie down to here.
Well, pretty much. And some nights it was getting pretty short. Every night you had to have a new one.
Why did they think that was so funny? That they would go into hilarity just because I took a pair of scissors and cut a piece off of my necktie. They thought that was so funny.
I don't know why they thought it was funny. It just was part of the
But
program.
they just thought it was so funny.
As far as I was concerned, it was just part of the program. And then every night you showed a cartoon, and you used either a Looney Tune or a Merry Melody. And they might be Bugs Bunny or Porky Pig or something of that nature.
Hey, what's up, Doc?
And then you'd tell all of these different stories. You used to, and I always thought these were all real people, but apparently from what you told me, some of them were fictitious. You mentioned one boy, I don't remember his name, but you said, well, he's Irish and he's very fair-skinned and he has to be careful he doesn't become sunburned. And then you used to
Pretty graphic.
you used to read a letter every so often. The girl's name was Molly Mo Hudson.
Oh, now I remember. First time in 60 years. Go ahead.
And it was like a running thing. She'd tell what she was doing, and I don't know if she was made up or if she was a real person
Yes,
who wrote
she
it.
was fictitious.
Okay. And one night you did a shadow puppet show, and she was one of the characters in it, or at least mentioned in the show. You mentioned in that particular puppet show.
What a memory for a 7-year-old.
Remember, I was getting older during the time it ran. Because when you went off, I was either 9 or nearly 9. But I remember during that time, 1956 was when Perry Como came out with his hit record, Glendora. And you were very much aware of this. And for one of your contests one night, the first prize, and this wasn't something that would take place on the show, but they would have to write in on this contest apparently. The first prize was going to be an autograph by Perry Como. The second, third, and fourth prizes were carbon copies of the autograph. I don't know if anybody uses carbon paper very much anymore.
No.
And then you had another contest when the prize.
I want to tell you that one prize was, I took the winner down to Manhattan to the rehearsal of the Perry Como show. That was a prize, that we could go to the rehearsal. And I remember he came out with 2 people. Those people, you know, folks, always traveled in an entourage. You never see Bob Hope alone. There'd be 10 people following him. And I said to Perry Como, I said, hi, I'm Glendora. I'm in love with a dolly named Glendora. She works in the window of a big department store. Hair of gold, she never get young, but she'll never be old. Oh, Glendora, I want to see more of you.
And of course, you know what Glendora was in the song.
She was a dummy in a department store window.
Yes.
And I always thought that that song was written by somebody up here in our Albany, Pittsfield area, and who had watched that show and got that name and then had that epiphany about that song. But that's purely on personal speculation.
I've tried to research that, but I couldn't find anything. The composer's name was Ray Stanley,
Ray Stanley.
and I can't find anything on it. And I've been looking for the sheet music too, and I haven't been able to find
You
it.
never found it.
No,
What do you suppose happened?
I just haven't been in the right place at the right time.
Well, you think you will find it?
I'd like to think so.
This is my friend, Wayne Collins, of 62 years, right, Wayne?
Going on 63. I have many specific memories of that program.
It's wonderful. Are you through your...
No,
Oh,
no.
good.
I remember one night you said, "You people wouldn't do me a favor, would you? Well, would you do me a favor and read the first chapter of your Bible?"
No kidding. Good girl.
And
Is that right?
Yes.
And did you do it?
Well, I have done it since.
Oh, yeah. 100 times.
And occasionally you'd make a personal reference. Once in a while you'd mention something about your husband, not very often. You mentioned your brother Ralphie and how your mother would get after him if he didn't wash his elbows.
Yes. It was like the boy who the mother said, piano teacher will be here in 15 minutes. Have you washed your hands? Yep. Have you washed your ears? Well, I washed the one next to her.
When the show was slated to end, of course, I wanted to remember what you looked like because I figured I would never see you again. So I wrote a letter on an old Underwood typewriter and sent it in and asked if I could have a picture. And I have the picture with me today that you sent me back in the fall of 1956.
We're going to get a close-up of this, boys. I'd like to have you get a close-up of this. And Wayne, hold it very steadily for a long, long time. Yeah. Is that good? Hold it, dear, for a while.
Okay. And on the picture, you did write, "To Wayne, smooth sailing, Glendora."
Yeah.
And that's how you always would end your program, by saying smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing. It was cute. Nowadays, those things are all replaced. It's not ships anymore in the sea. Wayne, tell them what's written up there,
Yes,
please.
across the top it says SS Glendora, Monday through Friday, 5:45 until 6 p.m. And you packed a lot into those 15 minutes. And it says WRGB's unique children's show with a nautical theme. Games, tricks, cartoons, and parties are planned each day to delight the young crew.
I tell you, folks, you just can't get the feeling of it, how that show was run by the children. Little Jimmy Talbot was 9 years old. He lived in Schenectady. His daddy was a test pilot for General Electric. And little Jimmy Talbot, he sent in 100 postcards to get into the show. How you got onto the show was there was a treasure chest, and you sent your request in to be on the show, and then the children would pull out the names. Tell them about it.
Yes, that was the next thing I had on my list. When the show was going off, you had a big treasure chest that was full of letters. And this was full of letters of boys and girls who had not had a chance to be on the show. So you said, "I know it isn't the same as being on television, but I'm going to send you a picture and send you a packet of giveaways." And some of them in my neighborhood got those giveaways. I
No.
didn't because I
Really?
didn't have a letter in, but they got
Yeah.
another picture and they got whatever it was you had in the envelope that you sent. It was several things, as I remember. I couldn't tell you specifically what they were.
So Jimmy Talbot sent in 100 postcards to make sure you got on the show. And I always treated the children as adults. Always. And I treated Jimmy Talbot as an adult, and I asked him if he wanted to volunteer on the show. And he would come down every afternoon after school, and he would help put on the shoulder pads to show that these mateys were officers, and have their caps on, and have their tie, their black tie, and they were asked to wear a white shirt and either a black skirt or black pants.
Yes, and when the show would start, after the theme song with the little boat going back and forth, then it was trained on the children. As I remember, it wasn't trained on you right away. And they'd say, this is Chief Mate so-and-so reporting from Schenectady, New York, or from Dalton, Massachusetts, or from Glens Falls, New York, or wherever it happened to be. And then after that, you would go into the program, whatever you had planned for that night. And on the very last episode, I remember that one very clearly, too. You were playing some character. You weren't playing yourself at this time, but some particular character leading a meeting, and you had a podium and a gavel, and you were reading notes with a lorgnette, and you set it down, and I don't know if this was in the script or not, but you banged the lorgnette, and when you picked it up to read it, it was cracked. So I remember you saying, no.
Oh, Jimmy Talbot, the show came not from that lavish Niskayuna Balltown Road where it is today. It came from an old bowling alley on the Mohawk River, right next to General Electric as you went over the Scotia Bridge. You'd go from Schenectady over Scotia, over the Hudson River, the Mohawk River, the Schmohawk River. And he went upstairs to the refrigerator. We had any such thing down in the cellar where my show came from. And first of all, he walked right in front of a camera of the live show. And then he dropped a bottle of Coca Marsh on the studio floor. Can you imagine that? What bigger mess would you have than a bottle of Coca Marsh? Chocolate syrup.
I do remember when you were doing Satellite 6, you were advertising popcorn that would pop in the pan, and the foil pan, and
Yeah.
it would have like a
Jiffy
foil
Pop.
dome, and you'd peel it away, and sometimes it would spill onto the floor. Because again, you were doing live commercials.
television. You know, there was no tape. Oh no, this is 1955. Tape for television did not come in until 1962.
And I remember very clearly the last show, and of course this was a sad time because the show was going
Yeah.
off the air, and I can still hear you saying it. You said, we'll be sailing to another port, but there's no port like the first one. And you'd say smooth sailing. But I figure you must have had well over 1,000 children who appeared with you on that program, not counting those
Do you think so?
Yes. Well, I figured the show ran for about a year and a half, about 75 weeks times 5. And I remember you having at least 3 with you on each program up in front. So it would be well over 1,000.
Very reasonable. You see, General Electric, in their great wisdom, in 1956, listened to a phony survey that people wanted movies. They didn't want live local shows. Can you believe anybody being that obtuse to think that? So they called us all together, Ernie Tatro, Earl Pudney, Earl Jarvis, Kathy the Cook Show, if you can name any of all the live shows.
Uncle Jim Fisk.
Yeah, Bill Mulvey, Bronco Bill. And of course, not Freddie Fryhofer, that was money. Oh no, we can't do that, sponsored. But they called us all together and they canceled all the live shows. Well, in their great wisdom, in 9 months they called and said, will you come back? And that was the Satellite 6.
Yes, that came out in 1958.
You see, General Electric, in order to be a manager for General Electric, all you had to be was an accountant. You had to know how to count beans. Any more?
Well, those are my most vivid memories
Oh,
of the program.
you are a treasure. Oh, you are a treasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Is there anything else that we could add?
Well, just that it was a much-loved show, and people still remember it to this day.
That's the thing. We carry it in our hearts. People in Walmart, it happens like Clark Nichols today. That happens almost every week, a couple of times in Walmart. And I regret so deeply that I didn't make an audio recording of these encounters. Why, there would be at least 1,000 of them. And I regret that we didn't make an audio tape of the show. You didn't have a videotape, but I could have made. Here you had all the resources of WGY right there. And all you had to do was ask an engineer to make a copy. And we'd at least had a copy of the audio. There was one thing though, Wayne. What do you remember about the 78 RPM I told you about?
About the 78 RPM?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Well, do you remember that WRDB had these news vans, Chevrolet station wagons? You remember that? And they were all beautifully lettered with WRGB Channel 6 News. That was an Ernie Tatro brainstorm. Well, all the staff had access to those vans, and you would just go to, now this is at Balltown Road, and you would just go to the back door and the artist entrance, and you'd take the key and you'd sign your name and the time, and you'd take a van. And I would go to these schools, to these assembly halls in the schools all over, Canajoharie, Gloversville, Amsterdam, all over, and put on programs in the assembly hall. Well, I'm telling you folks, it was just like Bob Hope going to the troops overseas. They didn't care what you did. Anything you did was right. You came to see them. And so we had this, WGY gave me a small audio tape, reel-to-reel audio tape machine. And fortunately, I operated it right, and I got a program, and they put it on a platter for me, on a RPM 78. What year is this? Anywhere between 1958 and 1962. And we have that. And I meant to bring it. It's in the box. If anybody can find the box and bring me that 78 RPM. And then Gregory Washburn, who you met, I hope, he very cleverly made a video, a DVD of that RPM going around and around and around with the children applauding and screaming and accepting and just having such a grand time in their assembly hall.
I know you came to Pittsfield to the Berkshire Common on that
That's right.
occasion.
We should have Jim Schulman here. Jim Schulman has a picture of that. Who was at the Berkshire Common? Is that
believe so.
exist today as a Berkshire?
Yes.
It exists today.
Yes.
It was a nice picture. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. It was all in the uniform. I'm sorry I don't have the uniform.
Yes.
I'm sorry I don't have that. Another thing I'd like to tell you is that you know who Jim Fisk? He ended up to be the last one to do Freddie Fryhofer. The man before Jim Fisk was in a convertible on Equinox Mountain on Sunday in Manchester, Vermont. And he hit a soft shoulder and was instantly killed.
His name was Bud Mason.
Bud Mason. Do I have my facts right?
Yes.
And the next Monday they had to come up with somebody. I think they came up with Bill Edwardson.
I'm not sure.
And it really wasn't his cup of tea. But first, I wanted to tell you about what its talent Jim Fisk was. He airbrushed that whole set. It really looked like a ship, didn't
Yes, it did.
You really thought you were on the ocean on a ship. He airbrushed that whole set, and it was only 3 flats on hinges. Now, we are absorption here, our total engrossment of the brain right now is to recall the flavor of a live television show for children in the 1950s, the latter half of the decade. Have we done that?
I believe we have.
The fan mail was about 40 letters a day. The next segment of this show is going to be the people who came to the homecoming that we had here at the Carousel on July 1st of the year 2017, Anno Domini. And I have the names and numbers of all of those people, and I've called every one of them. and asked them if they would jot down their memories of the SS Glendora to pass on this great thing that was the Camelot. There was once a Camelot. And that will be the next segment. I'm going to interview them over the telephone. And that will be Satellite 6, Glendora Satellite 6. But there you are, great General Electric with all of their wisdom. Get rid of the live shows, and 9 months later, will you please come back? I think the SS Glendora was the only one that did come back.
As I remember, it was. And that Satellite 6 ran for about 4 to 4.5 years, as I remember,
Yes,
from
it did.
1958
Yeah.
to 62.
Yeah. Now let's see if I can think of any funny incidents. I told a lot of them on Pat Gormley. Let's see.
Well, I remember that you were advertising on Satellite 6 the Honer Melodica, and you'd play it every so often.
Okay, go ahead, tell them.
And one night, I don't know if you actually dropped it or hit it on the console, and you said you're out of luck, it's not broken.
I told you, didn't I, that I said to the children the SS stood for steamship because it was a... No, that stands for stupid show. When video finally came in, the people really didn't know how to use it. The WRG people just didn't know how to use it. And by the time they finished taping the show, it was only 3 or 4 minutes and I could have gone live. Well, I was walking home in Niskayuna, and there were some kids playing out on the sidewalk, and the mother opened the door, the front door, and said, "Billy, Glendora's on," and he says, "I'm not going to watch that dumb show." And he turned around, and who was walking down the street? Let's see, what else? Oh, a little boy came in to be on Freddie Freihopper. This was after a tape came in. And little boy ran up to Mae Dunn, the WRGB receptionist, and he said, "Can I see Glendora?" And Mae Dunn, without thinking how it sounded, he said, "Glendora isn't live today." Any other things you have to recall, dear?
Just that it was a very unique show, and that I always enjoyed it, and I was very sorry when the show came to an end.
You said you were awfully sad, little boy.
Yes, that's why I sent for the picture, so I would have something to remember it by.
Oh, yeah. And you did. You put it on your mirror in your bedroom, didn't you?
Yes.
For how many years? 60 years?
Well, not 60, but a few.
Well, now, let me see. Have we covered everything for the SS Glendora? Okay, I'll be back with you all, with the people who came for the reunion at the Carousel last summer. I'll be back with you all that. Let's see if I can tell you a joke. Did you hear about the college president who was relieved of his duties? And in his last speech before the board of directors, board of trustees, he said, "I exit this job the same way I entered it, fired with enthusiasm." Do you know about the church that had a Bible selling contest, and the man who sold the most Bibles started, and he started severely. And the parishioner said, "Well, what did you say to the people to sell the most Bibles?" And he said, I just said, do you want to buy a Bible, or do you want me to read it to you? Grace and peace unto you all. Thank you, my dear Wayne.
Thank you for having me.
See you soon, folks. Smooth sailing.
Cut. Cool. All right, I want to get a copy of that picture so I can... Glendora, do you want me to edit these two cameras together and give you
Yeah.
an interview that way?
Can I send it to you on a DVD?
I'd rather have the disc. I can copy the disc.
No. What are you saying? Excuse me.
Is that recording on a disc on that camera?
No, it's on an SD. I'll take it home and put it on a disc.
Yeah, I'd rather have the SD. And then...
You do?
And then I can mail it back to you.
All right. You want it right now?
Yeah, if I could.
I think I could do that. You could take the SD. I could put in another SD for the carousel people.
Well, you'll have it before that.
Oh, I will?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm going to start interviewing them in a few days.
But I will copy it today and mail it tomorrow.
Certainly.
I just need your address.
Yeah, that would be great.
You wanted to copy this?
Yeah. I take it out of the...
Just slips out.
So, Gregory, will you be so kind? You got an envelope for the SD, honey?
Yeah, I'll have one. Let me see, where do I want to do this?
Right here.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, this is something. This is neat.
Hey, welcome to For Your Information. Today's show is, I thought I did many years, 50 years of on and off of public access television, but we have a guest on today's show who has done much more than that. 45 years on public access television, starting in 1972, 67 stations throughout the country, almost 12,000 shows, and that's just since 1972. She's still going. That's Glendora. Let's see, let me get all your family names. Vesta Folsom Buell, creator and host of A Chat with Glendora. Great to have you here.
So happy to be here.
And she brought two people to make sure I keep in line today. Wayne Collins, who I've met at the Berkshire Day, at the Berkshire Carousel, July 1st, and that was a great day. We taped a program there. And then Mr. Washburn, Greg Washburn, who I've met over in Nassau, where Glendora lives right now. How was the travel over today after a foot or more of snow?
Oh, it was a little bit kind of testy driving here, a little bit over the mountain and all, but my truck was in four-wheel drive, and I made it here. And,
that's great.
Made it through
that's
the inclement weather. So.
We never close here, or try never to close when you're going to do a public access program. So Glendora, it doesn't. Actually, Glendora started right here. How about if we hold up to the camera 3, right over here. Glendora started doing programs right here in Pittsfield in the 1950s.
1952 and 3, yes.
And that was when you were over at Park Square, Bank Row.
2 Bank Row, yes, upstairs, folks.
It was WBRK was there, and they took over and did a TV show.
Yes.
There.
It was Leon Podolsky. He was a consultant for Sprague Electric in North Adams, and he put up the money for the first TV station, and only TV station in Pittsfield.
And didn't you, and then that was in Pittsfield, then you were with Channel 6, which was in...
Well, there are quite a few in between there from Pittsfield WMGT, folks, which, by the way, was ultra-high frequency. Do any of you remember that? Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was Channel 74. and we would hope that we'd get on the air the next day, and then the wind would blow the antenna off of Mount Greylock.
Hey, even today, WAMC is having a fund drive to buy that tower on Mount Greylock.
Is that so?
Yes, yes.
And then from there to Channel 9, WMUR TV, Manchester, New Hampshire, 40 miles north of Boston.
Yes.
And
I
that
know.
was the birth of the SS Glendora. Folks, I want you to see these primitive television pictures. Do you have a close-up camera?
Sure. Let me hold it up to camera 1. There you go. And you can continue talking.
It was a little, it was Glendora and her picture party, and 2 little children would come on, and they would see a series of 5 pictures, and they would tell an incident in the life of some famous American, and whichever child told the story more closely would win the prize. And that all originated at 2 Bank Row.
Wow.
Yeah, it is interesting.
And who was F.H. Bransford? They took this picture. 21 MacArthur Street, Pittsfield. Your private photographer.
Look at that.
And yeah,
And who is this? Oh, obviously it's the local.
a little local boy. Well, they claimed to go as far. UHF was not very powerful, but they did claim to go as far as Adams. And down in Springfield, we could see a very fuzzy picture.
Very good. And before we go much further.
And then, oh, you want to go there? All right.
Yeah, this Glendora graduated from American International College.
Magna cum laude.
Yeah, very good. And what did you study there?
English and a minor in psychology.
And then, years later, you went and studied physics.
Yes, at the State University of New York at Buffalo.
Yeah, very good. And you were honored in this magazine last year. Now it's the 2016, because this is 2018.
Yeah.
You were honored with an article in here about all your family history and everything.
All the ups and downs.
Yeah.
Now, this is the show at in Manchester, New Hampshire. You see, this was the little children. See how many children were on the program, folks.
Now let's get that's Manchester. We never.
Yeah. Manchester.
We should have checked out who. Wayne, you weren't. Were you ever on her program?
No, I never was.
No, I was going to say, who are those young people that from Pittsfield on Bank Row? They're probably still around and brings back memories.
Wayne wanted to be on the program. Wayne is a super fan of the SS Glendora.
Yes, yes.
I think he's...
As there's many of them.
Yes, yes. And then from Manchester, folks, it went to the great big station, WBZ TV, Channel 4 Boston, where you were. That's where you were going to college.
Well, it was neighborhood, Boston neighborhood television.
Yeah, but this was the big one, the big
Yeah, oh, I know,
Westinghouse TV
WBZ,
station,
yeah.
which dominated New
When
England,
I
and it was
lived here.
sponsored by Milton Bradley.
Yes, yes, yeah. And they were located in Springfield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were located about 5 blocks from my house. You went out my front door and down the
Right.
hill, and there was the Milton Bradley Company.
Yeah, that's. And I originally was from Salem, Mass, and they had games manufacturers there also.
Trot, trot to Boston, trot home to Lynn, trot, trot to Salem, and trot home again.
I didn't know we're gonna. You have such a great voice. Are you the backup singers?
Oh, she sings a lot. So.
Yeah, that's great.
And from there it went to WRGB General Electric. And Mr. Wayne Collins has a picture that, as a little boy, he wrote in, and I think Pat will show it to camera 1.
Yes, this
Sure.
picture,
Or camera 3, you can show. Wayne.
Glendora sent this to me
And hold
back
it there for a long time,
in
Wayne.
1956.
Hold it there for a long time. Long time,
And she
honey.
autographed it to me.
Hold it there for a long time,
Oh
baby.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
There you are,
Who's in the
cameraman.
picture there? Look, that was done where?
That's the WRGB,
Oh, okay.
Channel 6.
Owned by General Electric at the
Yes.
time.
Yes, I was paid by General Electric $375 a week.
Wow, wow.
That was something, you know.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
1955.
Yeah, I remember the 60s getting 45 or 50 cents an hour if I job in a pharmacy or something.
Really?
Yeah. So that was a lot of money. Now, is it true that some guy from Vermont beat you out? You would have been a national. You are. You are more channels than Captain Kangaroo.
What
Bob
was this
Keesham?
about a fellow from Vermont?
Wasn't Captain Kangaroo Bob Keesham from Vermont?
Oh, he was?
I thought he was, but
No.
I don't know. I used to
yeah.
watch. I watched him. So.
Yeah, we all
Kangaroo.
watch him.
Gregory, you did watch Captain Kangaroo?
Yes, I did. Yeah, and
Now, who else was on at that time who are no longer?
let's
Glendora's
see.
still here. Freddie Freihofer.
Yeah.
Bronco Bill.
Yes.
Buffalo Bob.
Yes.
Fran from
Romper
Kukla, Fran
Room.
and
Was it
On.
Romper Room?
That may have
Romper
been-
Room?
Oh, yeah, Romper Room.
yeah, I watched
Yeah.
that too. It was,
We had a couple of gentlemen doing a show which I helped out at the way we were maybe up to 10 years ago, and one worked on NBC and one CBS, some of these shows. So they may have been the producer too. So here's all the stations that Glendora is on in the United
68.
States. 60, yeah, 68 now. He went up.
But one of
Very
my
good.
favorites is Pittsfield.
Oh, we're 68.
No, you're 67.
Oh, we are. We
Newark,
are.
New Jersey is 68.
Oh, okay. You're still going strong, and that can be now. I just want to mention. It requires a local member, a member to be the presenter of Glendora's show, and you have to be live in Pittsfield, having retired from living in or working in Pittsfield. So this past summer, after we saw each other at the Berkshire Carousel, Berkshire Day, I signed to be the presenter.
What a brave man.
And please forgive me for my wraparound. I had worked on several shows. I don't even know how I was dressed. And the great staff here said I have to do a video to be shown. So I don't watch myself if I can help it.
The man who was behind and helped me so much, my connubial joy for 48 years, Mr. Franklin Fuller Buell.
And I presume this is your husband.
Yeah.
that's her husband.
Very distinguished looking gentleman. That's
he was
great.
a reporter on the Springfield Union.
Oh, that's where I know the name Buell. Yes.
Yeah.
I used to deliver the Springfield Union.
Did you really?
Now you're lucky to get a copy in the area.
Gregory, what do you think of this? Is it fun being on TV?
well, yes, this is. I'm having a good time. This is it's a memorable day or something.
Anything,
Yes, I'm
anything you
sorry
want
I didn't dress for like you guys. I get the college.
Anything you want to say, Wayne?
Just that I would like to have been on your SS Glendora program, and I never dreamed it would take 60 years to get on
60
television
years.
with you.
So I
So
kind
long.
of knew about this, Wayne.
long time coming there.
Yeah, and
Well-
Glendora, in some circles, you're known as the Hat Lady.
Yeah. The hat lady, the cat lady.
The cat lady, the humorous stories.
Well, would you like to hear the
Sure.
one of the best that came through, folks, from 2017? The teacher said, "Johnny, I think you cheated on your tests. In fact, I know you cheated on your test, and I think you copied the answers from the girl who was sitting across the aisle. The first question was, who was the first president of the United States? She wrote Washington, and you wrote Washington. The second question was, who was president of the United States during the Civil War? And she wrote Lincoln, and you wrote Lincoln. And the third question was, who was president of the United States during the Louisiana Purchase? She wrote, I don't know, and you wrote, me neither. Would you like to hear another joke?
Sure. You're on a roll.
Well, she's got a million of them. So.
A little boy down in Texas was at the end of his driveway trying to find homes for his puppies. And George Bush went by, and George Bush says, "What kind of puppies are those?" And the little boy said, they is Republicans. And George Bush was elated. Oh, he went away so happy. He came back the next week, and he said, "What kind of puppies did you say those were?" And the little boy says, they is Democrats. George Bush was irate. He said, "Last week you told me they were Republicans." And the little boy said, today, they's got their eyes open.
They got their eyes open.
Now, you don't do, besides the internet and your shows, you don't do any thing online, communicating.
Yeah, we tell a joke every day on Greater. You tell them about it.
Yeah, she does. She records with her phone or camera. She records like what she calls a 30-second joke, and then she uploads it to YouTube and to Twitter. Oh. And she's on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and we share it to all the different.
You've heard of the TV show 60 Minutes? This show is called 30 Seconds.
She's big. She's done a lot of the jokes, so that her phone is struggling to store all the jokes in it.
So why don't we get into some of your history? You came from Maine.
Yes, the state of Maine.
Your family.
However, Pittsfield's colder.
That's true. That's true. Very true. At least today.
The state of Maine,
Yeah.
18 miles from the Canadian border, where it's 40 degrees below zero every night in the winter.
Yeah, what town was that?
Presque Isle.
Oh, I've been there.
You have?
I had a roommate from Boston that moved up there when he got married and delivered milk and all that. And it took me 12 hours from Pittsfield to go visit him during a snowstorm. And no problem at all until I got on the road they lived on, and I went over the side of the road, so I had to walk down. They came and towed me out. So, but it was worth visiting them. But I don't think I'd go back again.
No, you folks think nothing of 10 to 12 inches.
Right.
I trembled last night in my slippers. I said, I don't want to go to Pittsfield tomorrow after we've had 8 inches here. But you seem to just take it in your stride.
Yeah. Well, you called about 8 o'clock this morning?
Yes.
And probably expected Marie and I to say the show's canceled.
Well,
the station wouldn't be closed. Maybe they close early on if they have no programming. But if we're going to do a show, our Pittsfield Community Television is here. Tell us more. When you left Maine, you went to Springfield, is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. From Presque Isle, Maine to Lincoln, Maine to Bangor, Maine to Springfield, Massachusetts.
And then when did you come to Pittsfield?
From when we were living in Springfield.
Yeah, all right.
And I came up and I had this little show that I showed you with the cute little children. And I said to this news station, TV station, WMGT in Pittsfield, I said, will you sponsor it? They said, will you put it? I said, would you put it on your TV set? They said, we probably would, but we need a copywriter. Will you be a copywriter?
Oh, it's great. And then after you went to American International College and got your degree there, did you you went to California?
Yes.
And
the University of California at Berkeley.
All right.
And I took tennis.
Did you work in? You took
tennis,
what?
I took tennis, elementary tennis.
Wow, you cover.
My friend was good. She got into
for all
intermediate
seasons,
tennis.
I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Now, didn't you work in the movie industry or television?
Yeah, I worked at NBC Hollywood.
Yeah.
I was.
That's all right. Don't worry.
We just dropped a show.
Just dropped a show.
That's the beauty of live television.
I was in the script service department. We typed up the scripts and mimeographed them for the big people upstairs.
Right.
Like Groucho Marx and Dinah Shore. And anyway, they said, take this script, these changes, these last-minute changes up to Studio A. Hurry up! And so I went up and I was handing them in, and that was fun. I saw the control room and the show going on. And when I came back, there was a man at the platform of the stairs at the landing, and he was kicking a canteen machine. Does anybody here remember what a canteen machine is? You put your nickel in and you got a candy bar? Well, he was kicking it, and he was saying, I put my nickel in there and I didn't get my candy bar. You know who that was? Robert Young.
Oh,
He was there to do Father's Notes Best.
yeah.
And he was very personable, and he's always very interested in people whom he met.
Yeah, he did a interview show with, can't think of it, used to, from New York, and someone who's been to Williamstown Theater Festival, and he was one of the best guests. He had a good sense of humor and all that.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, yeah. And who else did you meet when you were there?
Oh, Tallulah Bankhead.
Tallulah Bankhead used to come to the Berkshires. She must have been looking
Yeah, I
for
bet
you.
you. Yeah.
The Jug End in way in South County. She used to come
Who would
there all
that
the
be?
time.
Do you know, honey? He knows quite a lot about the ancient movie people.
Oh, Tallulah. Oh, she's an old movie star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know a whole lot about her really, but
Wayne, what was one of your fondest memories of the SS Glendora?
Well, I used to like it when you'd sign off and say smooth sailing. That was like your trademark.
smooth sailing.
People recalling, we've run into since Berkshire Day at the Carousel, and that's what they mentioned, smooth sailing.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't hear
and
that.
some other of your well-known remarks.
Pat, we're going to interview all those people over the phone and put it in the documentary SS Glendora that were at the July 1st homecoming.
Oh, okay.
I want to tell you a funny story, folks, that happened. You see this lavalier microphone? Well, when I started out, we didn't have any such thing at all. In fact, it was so old, folks, we had what you call a boom microphone. A man was on a platform and another man would push it all around the studio, and then the microphone would go into the person who was talking. That's what we had. Well, finally, RCA came out with a lavalier, so-called. You wear it around your neck, and it was this big. Then, one day, they come out with a lavalier that's this big, a little tube.
Yeah.
Well, I had a sponsor in Schenectady, Junior Booter, and he's giving away free lollipops, and he says, I want you, Glendora, every time you're doing my commercial, I want you to be eating one of my lollipops. So I had the lollipop here, and I had the lavalier here, and this kid was about to knock over the flat, and I gave him the evil eye. And then, instead of putting the lollipop in my mouth, I put the lavalier.
Oh yeah.
With a gold bridge. That really sounded good in 57,000 homes.
Oh, lavalier.
Well, we'll have to remember that since public access television is non-commercial. If you pull out the lollipop with a brand on it. Now, what else? So when you came back from California, we're working with all the celebrities and all that. What did you
Well, the truth of the matter is, people, that if you're starting out, Hollywood or New York City is not the place to make mistakes. You're done before you started. So, fortunately, and by the way, tomorrow is Epiphany, the last day of Christmas,
Yes,
January
yes.
6th. I had an epiphany, and it said, you go back to the very, very small towns, and you go on television and get your experience first. That's when I came to Pittsfield.
Very good. Now, back in the 1970s, when I was back in Pittsfield, we had public access television. We had it in Boston, too, in the early days. But Andy Rooney's daughter, Emily, they're from Albany, the Albany area.
I didn't know that.
She was the executive director. And then when the money ran out, we lost our staff. Some went to Hollywood. And Emily went to be in charge of Channel 5 News in Boston.
Really?
Yeah, and then she was the first woman producer with Peter Jennings on ABC in D.C. But she's and then she was back in Boston, where, again, and you might see her on a hosting a talk show now and all
Yeah.
that. She was great, and all the staff. And we still have